Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell. Brought to you by
OutdoorTVExperts.com. Everyone is spending more time at home these days, so wouldn't it be nice to watch a game, a movie, or even better, a concert while sitting on your patio or relaxing in your pool? Visit OutdoorTVExperts.com and use the Music Night discount to receive free shipping. OutdoorTVExperts.com, OutdoorTVExperts.com.
Okay, Michael, my part is done. Whether the rest of the show is any good is entirely up to you.
All right, welcome to Music Night at the Majestic for a special episode celebrating what would have been John Lennon's 80th birthday. With me tonight, Glen Burtnik and Reil. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, by the way, just so you know, this is a debate, right? So I'm
Absolutely. So step all over me if you would.
I'm going to be interjecting as much as possible, just so you know.
Okay, you get points for interruptions.
All right. Well, there you go. I'm going to win this one.
All right, go for it.
No, kidding.
All right. So the reason why we're here is there's a Gem Records has done a special tribute to John Lennon, saying what would have been his 80th birthday, and you guys were both heavily involved in the project. So before we get into that, though, I know you guys go way back. So why don't you bring everybody up to speed on how you got to know each other and how your musical paths have crossed?
Well, I could say something.
I remember hearing about the gripweeds for a while, and I around 1991, when dinosaurs roamed New Brunswick, New Jersey, I was making an album, a big concept album for a local thing, which was the Slaves of New Brunswick, we called it. And I wanted to get as many local musicians involved in the making of this record. And so out of the blue, I called Gripweeds. Now, is that your memory of when we first met, Kurt?
Actually, I met you before that. I met you at some music seminar, and you were on the panel. And
really?
It was like, yeah, it was right around the time you had your major deal, I think. And it was, you were a local, local musician made good, or whatever. So Glenn was up on the stage, and I remember him saying, if you're going to write a song, finish that song. That's what you said, Glenn. And I don't know if I took it to heart with every song I've written, but I do remember that little bit of advice. And then we met later a couple more times. Well, I think a Marshall Crenshaw show. You filled in on guitar. I was backstage. And then we met again with Slaves in New Brunswick. And we actually recorded with Glenn on a track. So that this is like way back,
Yeah.
80s. Yeah.
I guess 80s, 90s, early, like you said, 91 or late 80s. Yeah. I think everybody in this Gem Records stable has these long-standing connections with each other in various ways. Marty and Richard Barone, I was told they go way back to like the early 80s. And I think Marty had a lot to do with the bongos or something. He did something with them. I know he put out a record later on. But right. Everybody's got these connections, that go way back. And a lot of them happen to be around the state of New Jersey. Some of them.
Yeah. Gem Records owner and the guy that started it all, Marty Scott, is a New Jersey guy. And I was always aware of him. When I was a kid, like in the 70s, I bought a lot of these Gem imports.
Yeah, me too.
And and I also knew some of the people that he worked with. But in any case, here it is years later. We are both the Gripweeds and my current group, the Weeklings, are both on this record label based out of New Jersey. And then Marty came up with this idea. Why don't we put out a compilation album of John Lennon songs featuring all of the Gem Records artists, or most of them, or whatever. And so that's what we're talking about here.
Marty gets these brain waves periodically, and you have to sometimes, Marty's a great guy, but sometimes you got to filter out the wheat from the chaff, the great idea from the maybe not so great. So he's constantly coming up with stuff. And this was one of the ideas, I think, that, when he told me, I said, that sounds good.
Now you got
that sounds
something.
like a good one. And I tried to, being that he did some of the production at my studio, I tried to guide him a little bit and, give him some ideas and stuff. But it was his idea, and it was his kind of energy that pushed the project through, which I think, is good to have. Talking about the 2020s, when bands are doing their own thing, they're off on their own little tangents and labels and stuff. To have somebody who's kind of bringing things together, bringing bands together, putting in energy into your band and other bands, that's a nice thing to have now. And look, it's got us talking, so it's good.
Exactly. Well, since we're here for the Lennon project, obviously, Lennon and the Beatles were big influences on you both. What is Lennon? We'll start with you. There you go. There's the record.
You start with who? Me?
Whoever wants to go, just jump in and roll with. Who wants to talk about your first Beatle memory?
I think Glenn is. You got this. I got a feeling.
My first, being the oldest in this threesome here. The Beatles on Ed Sullivan. That's 1964. And it was huge. It's hard to explain, actually, to when I talk to younger people about the effect the Beatles had culturally. It was amazing. It was just like everybody talked about it. Everybody, if the Beatles, they changed the hairstyle. They came out with a hairstyle, and suddenly people, all kids, boys, all started to cut their hair that way or try to dress like the Beatles. If the Beatles wore pointy shoes, we wore pointy shoes. And as they changed, within a few years, they really only had like a 6-year history. But, when they started wearing flowered shirts, we started wearing flowered shirts. It was really a huge cultural undertaking. And I have to say, bigger than Michael Jackson or Prince or Led Zeppelin or anything, because as big as those other artists are, it was almost like, the Beatles were certainly bigger than Elvis. They were iconic. So I was a 9-year-old kid sitting in my living room with my family. The Beatles came on Ed Sullivan, and I remember paying close attention to everybody's reaction. And my oldest brother hated them. My father didn't understand them, but my younger brother loved them. So I paid attention, and then I became a drummer because of it. And
you're a drummer?
Yeah, I'm a drum. I was a drummer first, and so really, I often think that I probably wouldn't. I always loved music, but I probably wouldn't be a musician had it not been for the Beatles.
I'd have to say the same thing, except I didn't see Sullivan. I was too young for that. But the Beatles were always there, like a backdrop soundtrack to our lives. Everything was touched and influenced by the Beatles. I think there was a major dividing line in the culture, in music, kind of a before and after. I don't know if we've really gotten that kind of dividing line since, where, sure, you've had other genres and styles, but when things changed after the Beatles, they stayed changed. And bands are still measuring their output and their writing and their recordings to what those guys did. Even those guys measure what they do after to the Beatles, to their work in the Beatles. So it was something happened, an amazing thing happened. It was a renaissance that, happened in our cultural lifetime that, I don't know, will it happen again? Probably sometime, but, the conditions came together just so The music industry was just in the right place to take these guys and catapult them, so it was just perfect. And plus all of the cultural things happening just galvanized the music, and they were sparking off the other bands as well. They just happened to be the most, visible and the best, probably. You could just say that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're still talking about them, and most people are, and their music is perpetual.
Well, I think pretty much everybody who's been on the show so far, irrespective of genre that they're, in, has said the same thing.
Yeah.
That one of the defining moments was that Ed Sullivan, Greg Kinn was on, and it was,
Yeah.
he was reliving it as though it was yesterday. It made such an impact on him,
And he met Chuck Berry, by the way.
Hey,
Greg Kinn. He's got
Wow.
a Chuck Berry story that will just leave you blinded.
you know
But
what?
I can't tell it here because it's a family show.
No, well, you know what? That might be why he didn't bring it up.
That's probably why.
Now, Glenn, you actually appeared in Beatlemania on Broadway, but you didn't play Lennon. You were in the role of McCartney, correct?
Yes. I spent not much time. I spent about 6 months in rehearsal, and then I played on Broadway, and then LA, and then San Francisco, and then San Diego, and then I quit, and I got involved in other things. But it was a good experience. I've always said I didn't go to college. I went to Beatlemania because that was prior to that. I had been a bar musician and a touring band, but Beatlemania, definitely the bar was much higher, and the quality, it was really the first time that I had to pick apart as many of the notes on those records as possible and recreate them with a bunch of other guys that were doing the same. So that was a good, really great, learning environment. And, I was learning from the pop music canon of the Beatles,
Canon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you kind of, you still sort of play the McCartney role in the Weeklings, sort of. You play bass.
I do. What happened, and here we are so many years later, because I was in Beatlemania in 1978, and a lot has happened since. But with the Weeklings, it's we were doing a show of Beatle music. I was doing like every 45th anniversary of a Beatle record, I would do it. The 45th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper. Then the next year was the 45th anniversary of the White Album. And then we went all the way around, and then we ran out of records. So we said, okay, the 50th anniversary. And all of the later records, I had to have horn sections and string sections and a harpist and a choir to try to recreate those records. But then it was time for the first two albums, the 50th anniversary of Please Please Me and with the Beatles. And those records are predominantly just a quartet. There's only a few moments where there's an overdub or a piano or maybe hand claps. But so I didn't need all these extra musicians. And what we found, so there was really four of us on stage with a few extra things. But we found that the arrangement of those on those albums was great for a quartet. There was a rhythm guitar part that was great. There was a bass part that was great. Everybody had a role. So in doing that, we decided, hey, why don't we do more gigs as a quartet? And I was bassist. Bob Berger was the rhythm guitarist. John Murjabi was the lead guitarist. And at the time, Dave was our drummer. And so it turns out, yes, I'm kind of doing what
Yeah, we all play those roles.
What I've been doing for years,
It seems like we all play those roles in our bands, And if I could say, the Gripweeds, when we started, it was kind of, well, obviously Beatles. I mean, we got our name from a John Lennon character.
Right.
But
War, yeah.
initially we kind of were trying to be this idealized 1960s band, um, doing music in what was originally the 80s for us. So we were trying to take that mid 60s vibe and do it, just sort of update it. I guess that's what everybody was doing. But we started out playing all these obscure songs. Like we would have never touched I Want to Hold Your Hand or anything. We would have gone for This Boy, or, we would have looked for, I think we started doing like That Means a Lot, all the, like, I think the Weeklings did that too. That Means a Lot. The songs the Beatles didn't do, we would go into groups like the Hollies and the Zombies and the Byrds and find all the stuff that was off the track. And then we sort of grew our band from that idea, four swinging young guys, and it evolved to three swinging older guys and a woman.
Progress.
Yeah, I think it's good. We're happy.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Glenn, you were talking about how, like, with the albums, how you needed more musicians, you needed more of this. One of the things that, I mean, not that it's, I mean, it's obviously well documented, but one of the most impressive things to me, is the growth in such a short period of time that the Beatles made from those, very much like Buddy Holly, where Buddy Holly went within just a few years, went from some doing traditional country material to doing, very intricate orchestral work within 5 years, basically. From those original decade years to the end. Then with the Beatles, if you look at the first album and look what they did within 7 years, it's amazing that growth on it. As musicians, songwriters, producers, how do you feed off of that, and what does all that mean for you?
Well, yeah, I could tell you the Beatles had the perfect situation coming in at 20 years old and into this Abbey Road, EMI studio with George Martin, who knew what he was doing, and engineers and technicians all around him saying, "This is how you make a record, boys." And they were able to take that and put their talents to it, and they had a hit, and they were able to sort of work within that system and grow. It's like the ideal kind of the way things were. I think you had professionals surrounding the musicians, and the musicians created the music, and the professionals made the music, a recording. And the Beatles got more and more and more control over that, and took the songwriting piece, and eventually they're sitting behind the console and moving the faders and stuff like that. So that they eventually amassed more power. And then you fast forward to now, where the musician is kind of left on their own. You're going to have to do everything. You're behind the board. You're making the music. You're doing it all. You're making your own videos. You're doing everything. And it wasn't like that. And I'm sure when you started, I know it wasn't like that for you. It wasn't like that for us when we started. It was the brass ring of, here, you're going to get a deal. You're going to get an advance. You can go into a studio, make a great record, get a hit, and you're on. And that, I think, has gone away. We had to work up through all that. We didn't have it at all, actually. We had a little small piece of it a little later on, but we started out, we didn't have EMI, the Gripweeds. We had to figure out how to do this stuff. And we just had a learning curve of recording, and we eventually got to where we are just because we had to. If we didn't do it, nothing would have happened for us, And eventually we attracted industry people to what we were doing, which was a tremendous help. But the game has changed so much since the Beatles were there.
It's kind of reversed itself.
Yeah.
Where before, with the major label deal, and Glenn, you can jump in on this. You had that business support, you had the marketing, you had the distribution, you had all that part of it. At the same time, you were dealing with non-creative people who were in control, who were more worried about money than what they were, the music actually being made. So now you can, because you can record your own stuff, with your own equipment, as opposed to having to rely on, Capitol Studios or whatever studio that the label is going to put you in. Uh, so you have that freedom to create. However, that easy access to distribution and retail and all that, not to mention the fact that retail has changed completely anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like it's completely reversed itself.
Mm. Was that to Glenn or?
Well, I'll just say that the Beatles were like a perfect storm. And they were fearless. It was unbelievable to think of a band coming out and basically reinventing themselves on each album. They didn't do that exactly at first, but they started to get tired of being the mop-ups. And before you knew it, I mean, Rubber Soul is so different from Revolver, which is so different from Sgt. Pepper, which is so different from the White Album, which is so different from, I mean, it was unbelievable how they kept reinventing themselves, how creative they were. And, and it takes a great deal of arrogance. And part of it was that they were so popular that they said, heck, let's do something different, and they weren't, I'm sure they were concerned about topping themselves, but again, it was the perfect storm. John Lennon meeting Paul McCartney, and everything that followed. And their timing was impeccable,
Yeah.
So, but arrogance, the guys, they were so arrogant, these young, arrogant guys, and nobody would dream of doing that today. People, people do try to reinvent themselves, but really it's all about the bottom line now. And I'm sure it was for them, but somehow there was this arrogance that whatever they did, the public would follow, and they were pretty right.
Well, it's making me think of like a band like the Dave Clark Five, who, as good as they were, did they have the ability to change like the Beatles did, and to go where the music took them, and to, break the formula on each record? No, I don't think they did. And a lot of those bands from when the Beatles started didn't have that ability or desire maybe to break the formula and just push. I mean, a band, you can just say 4 years from I Want to Hold Your Hand to the White Album. That's a shock, for anyone in music to produce something like those two polar opposites almost is shocking, and I think right there, 68 was a dividing line between those British invasion bands that were following the Hollies. They're following the Beatles, trying to one for one. They're working at Abbey Road. They're making, they're trying to like progress one for, right after they did their psychedelic, so the Hollies. But then White Album comes along and, can't go there. Can't do it. Just can't do it. Those guys were amazing. And as you say, Glenn, arrogance to have the balls to do it.
In anything, chemistry of the people involved is the key. Yeah. And I think that George Martin, having the history that he did and the respect of the label, he was able to keep them on a path that, made them they got away with stuff that most other bands wouldn't have
because of the success.
Because of the success, but they also had the trust in the label did trust in George Martin, I think, to keep them going, so that they didn't get too crazy or lose any money for them. So
what's interesting is you had that happen with the Beatles, and then they broke up, which takes us to our Lennon compilation. Then they broke up, and they each had to deal with the vagaries or trouble of the music business in the 70s and beyond, of how to survive. And each of them had their own, school of hard knocks to deal with, with their prospective labels, and the successes that they had in varying degrees, must have been difficult for them after having come from what they came from.
Right. Well, tell you what, we should probably get into the record,
Yeah.
itself, since that's why we're here. Now the album opens with a track from the Weeklings, Glenn, "The Word." How did you come to choose that track to do for this?
Uh, it actually just before the pandemic, we were rehearsing, and that was like one of the last times we saw each other for a long time. The four Weeklings, but and in the middle of a rehearsal, we were talking about what songs, you know, we would like to, we write songs, and we on our albums we kind of mix our originals with remakes of 60s and Beatle covers. But we kind of came up with somebody. I think Bob said, "How about the Word? Word's a pretty cool song." It's like, yeah, that's a cool song, and no, it's not a real obvious song that everybody's done. And the other thing was, I had remembered seeing a band that the Weeklings were on the same bill as this other band, and the band opened their show with a song with the Bo Diddley beat. And I was moved by it. I was reminded what an incredible, infectious, exciting beat for a song the Bo Diddley beat is. So here we are, just throwing ideas around about the Word, and I just start playing a modified Bo Diddley beat on the bass and started singing the song, and everybody kind of joined in. So we put that aside. Boom, pandemic hits. And Marty calls, and Marty says, "How about, we do this compilation record of John Lennon songs?" And I said to everybody, well, we have this arrangement kind of the Word. So what was interesting is that everybody, in the isolation of their own homes, all four of us separately recorded our parts. We never saw each other. And we just, email. We put the song together with email. And it came out pretty good. And it's the opening track on this groovy album.
Excellent.
Yeah, Marty and I actually were sequencing the record, and it was pretty, we said, that's number one. There's no question.
Cool. I love that.
It was obvious that would be the opener.
Yeah. Now, Kurt, you and the Gripweeds, the first track from you guys on the album is "You Can't Do That." How did you choose that one?
Well, that song kind of came up because we have been, or had been, backing Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere and the Raiders. And we were doing a show in Kentucky. It was the Abbey Road on the River Beatles celebration, actually. And the Weeklings were on the bill, too. So this was a few years ago now. And we needed to do, Mark Lindsay calls me up and says, "Kurt, we need to do some Beatles songs." And I said, "You can't do that. It could have been a Raiders track. Like, I can envision just this cool R&B inspired, just organ and fuzz guitar." And I was like thinking of songs like "Hungry" and "Stepping Out" and the stuff that the Raiders got hits with. And I thought, this is the perfect song for you, Mark. And he agreed. So we did it. And we played it live there, and we played it a couple more times in a couple other shows we were doing at the time. And we put it to the side, and then Marty calls, and I said, well, we got this great version of "You Can't Do That" with Mark. I don't think we can get Mark now because of the pandemic. So we just said, we'll do this version. We'll add our vocals to it. But at that point, we had to sort of change it because nobody in the band, unless I do an impression, I can do a pretty good impression of Mark and, sing like him. But I didn't really want to do that for this and kind of make it a, goof. So we decided to do our own kind of Gripweeds harmony thing and further do something different than what the Beatles have done. Because I guess there's some harmonies on the chorus, but that's about it. Or the bridge or something. for
Yeah,
the
now you-
Beatles track. So we added more harmonies. We added the fuzz guitar. We added this very 60s, Vox organ to it, just to really give the song a new life. And that's how that happened.
All right, and you also did Strawberry Fields Forever.
Yeah, that was a whole other thing. As I said, as the Gripweeds sort of were founded on this idea of never go near the hit single. You always do the off track, and we did that with The Inner Light. Was a song we did going back maybe 4 or 5 years now for the How I Won the War album. We did a rock version, or more produced version of the George Harrison song, The Inner Light. And so when it came to picking another song for this compilation, I was looking for something that had some power to it, drama in the songwriting, something like The Inner Light that had these twists and turns that you can kind of go bang. And we were looking specifically for that. And then I had thought I'd remembered that I'd heard or been a fan of the version of Strawberry Fields Forever by a group called Tomorrow, which has had Steve Howe in the band back in 1967 or 68 probably. I think they had a single with that. And it was this very cool rock version, stripped down, 3-piece maybe. And I just liked it because the Beatles version is a certain thing and very produced and very orchestral, and this version was more visceral and rock. So I was like, I want to do that. And then it became this thing of, well, there's no middle eight in the song, no bridge. You've just got chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, and I think the Beatles came up with the same problem. How do you make this interesting over 4 minutes, and keep the audience enthralled? So it was perfect for us, different vocalists. That solves one problem. We have Kristen come in and write in on the first verse, and then we just varied the instrumentation. And it was the idea to take this song, make it rock, and make it more epic than a stripped down version. So that's what we did. And that's what attracted me to the song.
Yeah. Now, the Weeklings also did, actually, the song that closes the album is What's the New Mary Jane? Glenn, how did you guys choose that one?
It was kind of a challenge, like a self-challenge, an assignment. I've always enjoyed, some of the weirder, offbeat Lennon exercises, and this one, What's the New Mary Jane, may possibly go down as John Lennon's wackiest song.
Yeah.
If anybody's heard the recording during the White Album that he did of it, it's just zany, and it's like, what was he thinking, kind of thing. But I really liked the idea and the challenge of, can we make this into something cool? And so I kind of sat down at the piano once and I started playing Lady Madonna chording, like basing the song on Lady Madonna on the keyboard, and slowly altered the time signature and everything, and came up with an arrangement that the band jumped in on. At first, everybody thought I was nuts because the song is it's not a popular song. It's a underground song, but I personally like appealing to deep track Beatle fans. So I prefer, like you were saying, with Inner Light, like I prefer trying to make a statement utilizing the lesser known Beatles songs, because really it's just impossible. I feel it's just too difficult to try to beat the Beatle records. They're just too good, these guys. So so I wanted to find the crappiest Beatles song and make it into something. So that's kind of what I did. We all did. That's what the Weeklings
one of the
did.
reasons we did Strawberry Fields is because Glenn and the Weeklings did Mary Jane, because we had thought of that one. Because that's that that's that track of like, the Beatles missed the boat on this one. They didn't release it. And it's an added challenge of, as Glenn said, it's such a wacky song. It's like there's almost barely a song in there, but there is. And you got to kind of produce it and coax it out. So we were kind of forced to find another song. And that led us to Strawberry Fields, just because I was looking for something that we could sort of find a way to make. I just felt there was room in Strawberry Fields for some odd reason, that there's room in that song to interpret. Whereas a song like Oh Yoko, or I think we said in another interview, Mother, those songs are really, they're really more difficult to sort of take on somehow. But Strawberry Fields has such an open structure, and it was just more inviting to sort of step into that. And yeah, and, as you said, Glenn, it's like you're taking on like the best songs ever. And, you got to have, some balls to do it, and so that's what happened.
Yeah, well, therein lies the challenge, is
Yeah.
the fact that, when you're working with great material, and especially material that so many people know, the odds of them going, yeah, you know what, you really came up short, is much
Yeah.
greater than the opposite. So, but I think what I like about the album is it's not too often albums that are a tribute to somebody come across as being just straight covers. There's nothing new to it. And my own take is, if you don't bring something new to the material, why do it?
That's exactly right. Yeah,
And
it's exactly right, because the music is so great, and why I think the first prerequisite to doing a cover song is, what are you going to bring to it? What is it that you're going to add that's going to make someone listen to your version over a Beatles version? So
Exactly.
what is it? You have to step up to that, to take that on. And but the thing is, music is an experience, and it's in the moment. And we create music as artists with that. And you're in the moment, in the flow. Oh, the song needs to go here. I hear organ coming in that chorus, and it becomes this in the moment build up. An experience that you're creating, and that's not a recreation, that's a creation.
Right.
And what Glenn and the Weeklings doing, and I think a lot of the, I would say every one of the tracks on here has, the bands have stepped on, into their own thing, and they took the song and ran with it in their own way, and you have to, otherwise no one's going to listen to you. They'll say, okay, yeah, I've heard that already. Let's go back to the real version.
Exactly. Now, we haven't had a chance to get into the other songs that are on the album, and there's some really good tracks on there. Now, the Midnight Callers have got three songs on there. Were you guys involved in the Midnight Callers recordings at all?
Well, yeah, I actually brought the Midnight Callers to Marty to sign, because I was working on their album. They had recorded the album. Their upcoming record, which I think is coming up in the next week or two. They had recorded the album on their own. I came in, they asked me to mix the record, and I said, you really need to work on the vocals. So we tracked vocals at my studio, House of Vibes, and then I mixed it. So then, and I mastered it too. But so then when the Beatles thing came up, it was essentially do the same thing. So they came in, and I helped them. We tracked the vocals. They had done the instrumentation kind of like the Weeklings. They did it in isolation, each recording their own parts. And then they came into the studio. We wore masks and we separated. And, I tracked their vocals, and then I mixed those tracks down. And it was fun because they did go somewhere else with the songs. Jealous Guy, Child of Nature, the Beatles hadn't recorded. Jealous Guy, they went in a completely different direction, which is very interesting. And I think they added something to It Won't Be Long, too, of their own.
Exactly. Well, guys, we are actually past our 30 minutes, so I do appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us here on Music Night and B to give
You're
us some
welcome.
extra time. Now, the album is out today, so there
There
we
it
go.
is.
Glenn's got the promo piece.
Let me give a shout out to the Anderson Council. I played
Yes.
drums with them on their track. I mixed that one. And the Gold Needles from England. I think I played drums on their tracks too. But it's not about me. It's about them, and it's about Lennon. And also Jonathan Pushkar, who I've never met, but I think we're going to meet him one of these days.
Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned the Gold Needles, the Cold Turkey Hey Bulldog.
Yes.
That's a killer track.
Interesting story. Do we have a second?
Sure, we'll be here as long
Okay.
as you guys want.
Because of the pandemic, the Gold Needles were struggling to record their songs for this, and they asked me to play drums because I had done some work with them before. They asked me to play drums. I said sure. And Marty Scott is all about deadlines. You gotta have that done. You're gonna need the track. He's pusher. Glenn, you ought to know that. He pushes you, and that's good. You can use that in a band. Have somebody pushing you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's pushing everybody, and I get an email from the Gold Needles, and they say, "Well, we have a pandemic, order in England here. We're not allowed to record inside. We can't meet together to record, so we have to wait till we can go outside and record." And I'm like, "Wow, you got to go outside? Okay, fine." And then the weekend they're going to record their track, there's a tornado warning in England, London, and they're literally like, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to record this track because the tornadoes coming into England. Now, tornadoes don't usually come into England, but I guess with global warming. So that's what happened with that. And long story short, they were able to record their tracks outside, and then I put my drums on. So how about that?
That's definitely an interesting story. You don't hear that hear
No.
that recording story very often.
Pretty weird. I mean, the
Yeah.
COVID-19 has forced us to do all kinds of weird things,
Well,
Fortunately and unfortunately, I think a lot of us have used it to our favor, or at least tried, except for live performance.
well, this is where we kind of touched before, technology to where you can do everything yourself.
Yeah.
Is really, if it wasn't for that, so much of recording wouldn't be done at all.
No, they didn't have
during
that in
time.
1918 in the
Exactly.
pandemic. What did they do back then?
Exactly.
They were on their own.
So, but all right, guys. Glenn, any final thoughts?
Buy records.
Yes, buy this record.
That is the point. All right, guys. We'll tell you what. Thank you very much for taking time to be on here. The
welcome,
Gem Record
Michael.
celebrates John Lennon album. It's really good. If you're a Lennon fan, Beatles fan, check it out. As we said, it brings something new to it. It's not just a straight covers album. It's really, really good stuff. Guys, again, thank you very much. Remember to go to, we'll have posted to all the websites for all the bands involved in the project where you can get this album. And you can always catch this episode anywhere on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, or at musicnight.net. So,
Bye, guys.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.